You've cut every obvious source of sugar out of your diet. No sodas, no candy, no cookies, no desserts after dinner. You've spent months reading food labels, choosing healthier options, and saying no to the foods you once loved, because you believed those sacrifices would protect your health. Yet every morning you check your blood sugar, and the numbers refuse to cooperate. Instead of improving, they seem to be getting worse. If this sounds familiar, you're not alone. Millions of people experience exactly the same frustration every single day. They do everything they believe they're supposed to do, yet their fasting blood sugar continues to rise. They blame themselves. They think they lack discipline. Some even assume diabetes is simply inevitable with age. But what if I told you that the real problem isn't your willpower? What if the biggest reason your blood sugar remains high has almost nothing to do with the sugar bowl sitting in your kitchen? Today we're going to uncover one of the biggest misconceptions about blood sugar, insulin resistance, and aging. By the end of this video, you'll understand why avoiding sweets alone is often not enough, why your morning glucose may be elevated even after eating perfectly the day before, and what your body is actually trying to tell you. Once you understand what's happening beneath the surface, your entire view of diabetes will change. Because the truth is this: your body is capable of making its own sugar. That surprises almost everyone. Most people imagine that glucose only comes from food. They assume if they completely eliminate desserts, sugar packets, soft drinks, and candy bars, glucose should automatically disappear from their bloodstream. But that's not how human biology works. Hidden deep inside your abdomen sits one of the most remarkable organs in your body, your liver. Most people think of the liver simply as an organ that filters toxins or processes medications. While it certainly performs those jobs, it has another incredibly important responsibility that very few people understand. It manufactures glucose every single day, even while you're sleeping, even if you haven't eaten for hours, even if you're fasting. Your liver constantly produces glucose because your brain, your nervous system, and many other organs require a continuous supply of energy to survive. Without this process, your blood sugar would eventually drop so low that your body couldn't function. Under healthy conditions, this system is perfectly balanced. The liver releases only the amount of glucose your body actually needs. Insulin keeps everything under control. Your muscles absorb that glucose. Your cells use it for energy. Everything works together like a beautifully synchronized orchestra. But as we grow older, especially after the age of 45 or 50, this delicate balance often begins to break down. The liver starts releasing more glucose than necessary. Insulin becomes less effective. Muscles become less responsive. Blood sugar stays elevated much longer than it should, and suddenly you're waking up with high fasting glucose despite eating almost nothing the evening before. Many people assume they must have cheated on their diet. They think, maybe I shouldn't have eaten dinner. Maybe that piece of whole wheat toast caused it. Maybe I ruined everything. In reality, the biggest contributor may have been your own liver working through the night. That's why diabetes is so much more complicated than simply avoiding sugar. Now let's talk about another belief that catches countless people completely off guard. Breakfast. For decades, we've been told that oatmeal is one of the healthiest breakfasts imaginable. It's recommended by doctors. It's promoted by heart associations. It's advertised as the perfect way to start your day. High in fiber, low in fat, warm, comforting, healthy. At least, that's what most people believe. But here's where things become much more interesting. Depending on the type of oatmeal you're eating, especially instant oatmeal, your blood sugar can rise astonishingly fast. In fact, some forms of instant oatmeal have a glycemic response comparable to, or even higher than, certain desserts. That sounds unbelievable. How can something that tastes bland raise blood sugar so quickly? Because your body doesn't judge food by sweetness. It judges food by chemistry. Inside your digestive system, starches are rapidly broken down into glucose. Your taste buds may never detect sweetness, but your bloodstream certainly does. Within a surprisingly short time after eating a bowl of instant oatmeal, large amounts of glucose may already be circulating through your body. Your pancreas immediately responds. It begins producing insulin, more insulin, then even more. Its job is to move that glucose into your cells before blood sugar climbs too high. If your cells respond normally, everything settles down. But if you're becoming insulin resistant, that process doesn't work efficiently anymore. The pancreas keeps trying harder. Blood insulin rises higher. Your cells resist even more. And the cycle quietly continues year after year. Let's make this more personal. Imagine someone we'll call Carol. Carol is 58 years old. She's extremely health conscious. She hasn't eaten candy in years. Every morning she prepares a bowl of instant oatmeal. She drinks orange juice because she believes fresh fruit must be healthy. Throughout the afternoon, she snacks on raisins, bananas, and granola bars. Her family constantly compliments her healthy eating habits. Compared to everyone around her, she seems like the picture of good nutrition. Then one day, she visits her doctor for a routine annual examination. Her blood work comes back. Prediabetes. Carol is stunned. She immediately thinks there must have been a laboratory mistake. How could someone who avoids sugar receive that diagnosis? The answer lies in metabolism, not in willpower. Although Carol wasn't eating obvious sweets, she was giving her body repeated surges of rapidly absorbed carbohydrates from morning until evening. Each meal, each snack, each glass of juice, each handful of raisins created another insulin response, another glucose surge, another demand on her already struggling metabolism. Her body never received an opportunity to truly recover. From the outside, her diet looked incredibly healthy. Inside her body, however, her liver and pancreas were working overtime every single day. This is exactly why focusing only on avoiding sugar often leads people down the wrong path. The real issue isn't simply sugar itself. It's insulin resistance, and insulin resistance changes everything. Think of insulin as a tiny key. Every cell in your body has millions of tiny locks on its surface. When insulin arrives, it unlocks those doors, allowing glucose to enter the cell where it can finally be used for energy. Healthy cells respond immediately. The doors open, glucose enters, blood sugar falls back to normal. Simple, efficient, elegant. But over time, chronic overexposure to glucose and insulin changes those locks. The cells become less responsive. It's almost as if they're saying, "We already have enough. We don't need any more." The doors stop opening efficiently. Glucose remains trapped inside the bloodstream. Your pancreas notices the problem immediately. Believing there simply isn't enough insulin available, it produces even more, then more, then more again. Unfortunately, adding extra keys doesn't solve the problem if the locks themselves have become resistant. This is why insulin levels can remain elevated for years before diabetes is officially diagnosed. Long before blood sugar reaches diabetic levels, insulin may already be working overtime. And elevated insulin creates problems far beyond blood sugar alone. High insulin encourages your body to store fat, particularly around your abdomen and inside your liver. It increases hunger. It makes you crave refined carbohydrates. It contributes to afternoon fatigue. It encourages fluid retention. It may raise blood pressure. And it gradually worsens the very insulin resistance that caused the problem in the first place. It's a vicious metabolic cycle. Perhaps the most surprising part is this. You can completely eliminate table sugar from your diet and still keep insulin elevated all day long. How? By eating foods that rapidly convert into glucose. White bread, white rice, pasta, crackers, breakfast cereals, mashed potatoes, large servings of refined grains. Although these foods don't taste particularly sweet, your digestive system quickly converts them into glucose. Your pancreas doesn't care whether that glucose came from a chocolate bar or a bowl of white rice. It simply reacts to rising blood sugar. That's why understanding how your body processes food is far more important than simply reading the word sugar on a nutrition label. And once you understand that principle, everything else about blood sugar begins to make much more sense. Now let's shift our attention to an organ that quietly controls far more of your blood sugar than most people ever realize: your liver. If your pancreas is the body's blood sugar manager, your liver is the warehouse. Every hour of every day, your liver is storing energy, releasing energy, filtering nutrients, processing medications, and carrying out hundreds of chemical reactions that keep you alive. It never sleeps. Even while you're asleep, it's hard at work making decisions about how much glucose your body needs. Under healthy conditions, this process is incredibly precise. As you sleep overnight, your liver slowly releases just enough glucose to keep your brain functioning. Since you're not eating for 8 or 10 hours, your body depends on this steady supply of energy. Without it, your blood sugar could fall dangerously low. But problems begin when the liver becomes overloaded. One of the biggest reasons this happens is the gradual buildup of fat inside liver cells, a condition that has become increasingly common in adults over the age of 50. Many people assume fatty liver only affects individuals who are severely overweight or drink excessive amounts of alcohol. That's simply not true. Millions of people with completely normal body weight have fatty liver without realizing it. Years of elevated insulin, frequent snacking, highly processed carbohydrates, and excess fructose slowly change the liver's ability to regulate glucose. Instead of releasing just the amount your body needs, it begins producing far more than necessary. Imagine a factory whose production line no longer responds to customer demand. Even when the warehouse is already full, the machines continue manufacturing products around the clock. Eventually, everything overflows. That is remarkably similar to what happens inside an insulin-resistant liver. Even when plenty of glucose is already circulating through your bloodstream, the liver continues adding more. This is one of the biggest reasons fasting blood sugar often rises with age. People blame last night's dinner, In reality, much of that morning glucose may have been produced while they were asleep. Unfortunately, many people respond by eating even less. They skip dinner. They eliminate entire food groups. Some even begin fearing healthy foods. But severe restriction can sometimes create another unintended problem. When your body senses prolonged stress or starvation, hormones encourage the liver to release even more stored glucose as a survival mechanism. The result? Even higher morning blood sugar. It's an incredibly frustrating cycle because the harder someone tries, the more confusing their results become. But there is another major piece of the puzzle that receives far less attention than it deserves. Your muscles. When people think about blood sugar, they usually picture the pancreas, maybe the liver. Rarely do they think about skeletal muscle. Yet muscle tissue is actually the largest consumer of glucose in your entire body. Every movement you make depends on it. Walking, standing, climbing stairs, gardening, carrying groceries. Even maintaining good posture requires muscle activity. Every one of those muscles acts like a massive storage system for glucose. When they're healthy and active, they eagerly absorb sugar from your bloodstream and convert it into usable energy. In other words, healthy muscles help lower blood sugar naturally. Here's where aging changes the equation. Beginning sometime during our 40s, muscle mass starts declining little by little every year. The process is gradual, so gradual that most people never notice it happening. The scale might barely change. Your clothing size may remain similar. But inside your body, an important transformation is taking place. Muscle slowly disappears. Fat gradually replaces it. Unfortunately, fat tissue doesn't consume glucose anywhere near as efficiently as muscle. Imagine you owned a warehouse with 100 loading docks. Deliveries arrive every day. Everything runs smoothly because there are plenty of workers unloading trucks. Now imagine 30 of those loading docks permanently close. The same number of delivery trucks still arrive, but there are fewer places to unload them. Traffic backs up. Everything slows down. That's exactly what happens when muscle mass declines. You eat the same meal you've eaten for years. Your digestive system releases glucose, but there are fewer muscle cells available to absorb it. Blood sugar stays elevated longer. Your pancreas works harder. Insulin remains higher. And over time, insulin resistance continues worsening. This explains something that confuses many adults. I eat exactly like I did 20 years ago. They're absolutely right. The problem isn't always the food. The body receiving that food has changed. At 35, your muscles acted like giant glucose sponges. At 55, there may simply be fewer of them. That's why preserving muscle isn't just about looking stronger. It's one of the most powerful tools for protecting metabolic health. Fortunately, this is also one of the few areas where positive changes can happen surprisingly quickly. Medical research consistently shows that regular resistance exercise significantly improves insulin sensitivity. And here's the fascinating part. When muscles contract during exercise, they activate an alternative pathway for absorbing glucose. Instead of relying entirely on insulin, working muscles can pull glucose directly from the bloodstream. Think of it as opening a second entrance. Normally, glucose has to enter through the front door, using insulin as the key. But during physical activity, another door suddenly opens. Glucose can enter even when insulin isn't working efficiently. That means blood sugar drops naturally. The pancreas doesn't need to produce as much insulin. Your cells become healthier. Your metabolism becomes more flexible. This is one reason even short periods of movement after meals can make such a meaningful difference. You don't need marathon training. You don't need expensive gym memberships. You don't need to become a bodybuilder. Consistency matters far more than intensity. Simple movements performed regularly often outperform occasional extreme workouts. Standing from a chair several times, bodyweight squats, wall push-ups, walking after dinner, light resistance bands, carrying groceries, gardening. These activities wake dormant muscle tissue back up. Many people notice improvements they weren't expecting. Afternoon energy crashes become less severe. Cravings begin decreasing. Sleep often improves. Morning glucose readings gradually become more stable. This isn't because of magic. It's because your muscles are once again helping regulate blood sugar the way they were designed to. Even more interesting is the communication that occurs between muscles and the liver. These organs constantly exchange chemical signals. As muscles become more active, they encourage the liver to reduce fat accumulation and improve glucose regulation. A healthier liver becomes less likely to dump unnecessary glucose into the bloodstream overnight. Suddenly, the cycle begins reversing itself. Lower liver fat, lower insulin, better blood sugar, more energy, improved metabolic flexibility. Everything starts working together instead of against itself. Now that we've explored the liver and muscles, let's discuss 3 hidden traps that catch even the most disciplined people. The first trap is fast carbohydrates that don't taste sweet. Many people believe sweetness is the best indicator of whether a food raises blood sugar. But your digestive system doesn't think that way. White bread, instant oatmeal, mashed potatoes, white rice, mini breakfast cereals. These foods can produce dramatic glucose spikes, despite tasting relatively mild. Cooking methods matter too. Heat breaks starches into forms that are easier to digest. For example, a freshly mashed hot potato generally produces a much faster blood sugar rise than a cooled potato eaten as part of a balanced meal. Pairing carbohydrates with protein, healthy fats, and fiber also slows digestion considerably. The structure of the meal often matters just as much as the ingredients themselves. This is why nutrition is rarely about labeling foods as simply good or bad. It's about understanding how combinations influence your body's response. And once you begin thinking that way, blood sugar management becomes far more practical than restrictive.